Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we're going to be going over the absolutely wild Zana modifiers that are going to be on the device in patch 3.15 and how they're going to drastically change the endgame from what we saw in 3.14. So, in the previous patch, we had a few endgame issues. People were complaining about the lack of the juice, not enough currency, and that is definitely not going to be the same in 3.15. So we didn't really have anything substantial on the map device and ultimatum. However, in 3.15, we have some massive additions. We have Delirium at 16 Chaos, which we've seen in the before be extremely overpowered, but now it's on there with Echoes of the Atlas and Craftable Watchstones, which we've never before seen. We've never been able to play with the Delirium mirror with Atlas passives as well as Watchstones. It's going to be crazy. And we also have Ritual on there for 13 Chaos as well. Again, we saw how powerful Ritual was just using blood-filled vessels last league. It's going to be even more insane now, and we'll get into why in just a second here. And on the lower end of things, to kind of kick the economy off and get things rolling with map sustain and also a bit of currency and stuff like catalysts, we also do have Metamorph in there at 5 Chaos as well. And for some reason, unbeknownst to me, Chris Wilson has had mercy on the Sextant modifier. Nemesis monsters drop 3 additional currency items, which if you guys weren't aware, was responsible for an absolutely ton of loot in endgame maps. If you've ever seen any of those screenshots on Reddit where people are complaining about too much loot, that's because of Nemesis drops 3 additional currency items, and that's going to be more accessible than ever in the up and coming patch. So there is an absolute smorgasbord of new endgame kind of farming strategies to go for in the new patch. Very, very exciting indeed. And that's on top of the new lead mechanic we have. So there's going to be an absolute ton of new stuff to try out. We're going to dig into a few ideas and what you might want to do with it. But yeah, fair to say it's going to be an absolute wet dream for farmers and currency min-maxers and anyone who really likes to get involved with the currency in general in Path of Exile. But don't worry, if you're on the kind of the starting end of things and if you want to just kind of get into getting a bit of currency as well, it's going to help you out a ton as well, because despite what everyone says, there is actually an incredible trickle-down effect in Path of Exile, and I'll explain that as well in this video. So let's start off at the very top. Delirium. So Delirium is easily one of the most powerful loot-based mechanics in this game. It awards the Simulacrum, which we'll go into in a second here. It awards tons of just general loot in maps, and it also awards Delirium Orbs. Let's start with Delirium Orbs. So Delirium Orbs are responsible for some of the hardest mapping content we've seen to date in Path of Exile, and previously in the last patch, they were incredibly rare and really only came from Heist and your odd Delirium mirror, which you just struggle to find in maps. That's not going to be the case in 3.15. With people having Delirium on every single map they do, there's going to be a large amount of these Delirium Orbs in play in the economy, so it's going to be much more easy to get Delirium Orbs in, you know, some sort of bulk, and also to have them on your maps in general. So it's going to be a lot more fun to be doing harder endgame maps in Path of Exile. Combine that with the new changes on the patch notes, and you're looking at some pretty challenging mapping content coming up for the new patch, which is really, really exciting and could potentially award players a lot of rewards if they're able to do that. So very, very good indeed. The next one here is I want to speak specifically about Scarabs. So Scarabs are one of the results that you can get from doing a Delirium mirror, and they're also one of the results that you can get from doing Simulacrum in terms of the loot tile rewards. And Scarabs are responsible for basically most of the fun in Path of Exile in the farming department. If you can get your hand on some Scarabs, the world opens up to you. Suddenly all those Atlas passives on the Atlas become a lot more interesting. You can guarantee stuff like Breach, you can guarantee stuff like Blight, and stuff just kind of works a lot better. And, when scarabs are scarce, when there's no one with bulk, it becomes a lot more difficult. In the past, there's been really no good way to get bulk scarabs outside of maybe farming Betrayal and Katarina, with the exception being Simulacrum. Now, in the previous league, Simulacrum was pretty rare and fairly expensive. This league, it's going to be fairly common and fairly cheap, meaning there's going to be a lot of people farming it, and there's going to be a lot of scarabs in circulation overall, and scarabs additionally will also drop from the Delirium mobs coming from Delirium, as well as the Delirium mirrors themselves. So I imagine there's going to be a ton more scarabs in the economy, and that's going to be good for everybody. More scarabs means more opportunity to farm, and I imagine if they're cheap enough, everyone's going to be able to take advantage of this and buy them up and do tons of maps with lots and lots of value. Buying stuff like Metamorph scarabs, Breach scarabs, Blight scarabs, and doing a strategy with them is incredibly lucrative even at the lower end of things, and that's definitely going to open up a lot of strategies which you'll find on this channel for everyone to get involved in. So super duper awesome there. Delirium is really, really good on the high end, and it also has incredible trickle down for everyone else involved in the form of scarabs. Another reason Delirium is going to be so exciting, though, is that the Atlas passives really haven't been used for it yet. There's tons of Atlas passives which really, really juice up the amount of Simulacrum splinters you get. There's Watchstone modifiers that actually increase the stack size of the Simulacrum splinters as well. I think you can get up to 25% increase the stack size of Simulacrum splinters just off Watchstones alone. That's 25% more Simulacrum splinters. That's insane value. In addition to that, you can also get a ton of bonuses in some of the other areas as well. Very, very cool, and I'm really looking forward to pushing the limits of how many Simulacrum splinters I can get from the new Simulacrum, from the new Delirium map device mod. Very exciting indeed. Let's move down a bit and shift down a gear, not in terms of profitability, but in terms of accessibility. So Delirium is a fairly hard mechanic, and you're probably going to need a pretty damn good build to do it. But something on the map device which won't require a very hard build to do it is Ritual. So Ritual is one of the most rewarding mechanics in this game right now, if not on par with Delirium in my opinion, if you take into account rare crafting bases as well as your rare kind of drops like mirror shards. It's very, very fun to do in my opinion, and there's actually a little bit of strategy involved with it as well, knowing when to reroll and when to spend your tribute and when to kind of go for those big rewards. So, Ritual is going to be at its best when it's combined with the top left Atlas passives, and that is what we saw last league, but now everyone has access to it without having to trade and without the tedium of having to fill up blood-filled vessels, which is great. It means that we're all going to get Ritual League levels of power, but it's basically going to be Ritual League juiced up to the max. If you enjoyed Ritual League, well, this is basically Ritual 2.0 with way more bonuses. You're going to be getting 4 Ritual altars, potentially 5 with Watchstones instead of 3. You're going to be getting way more tribute, and you're going to get the ability to actually re-roll multiple times. I think you can re-roll 3 times with the Ritual Atlas passives, and that's going to be a fantastic way to make a lot of currency. The thing that really makes Ritual cool, though, is that naturally spawning rituals, which is what's on Zana, is actually going to yield Ritual Vessel Splinters. These splinters can be combined into the Ritual Vessels, and those vessels can be used for, that's right, more ritual action on the map device, meaning you essentially get a pseudo refund from actually using Ritual on the device in the first place, which is really, really awesome. And if the Ritual Vessels command a higher price than the actual Ritual mod cost itself, you may even just flat out profit off of the Ritual Splinters you acquire just by itself. So as soon as you unlock Ritual, it's just infinitely profitable to do it over and over again, as long as you're in the correct Atlas region. And then taking Watchstones into account, it gets even better. So I'm incredibly excited to try Ritual out. I find it really, really fun as a mechanic, and I really can't wait to try and go for some of those big rare items, which you can kind of pick up like mirror shards and stuff like that. Very, very excited indeed. Alright, next one I want to talk about here is Metamorph. So Metamorph is largely very, very profitable, especially in the correct Atlas regions. People don't give Metamorph enough credit. Likely, catalysts will be incredibly expensive, as they always are, and there's a ton of them which do yield a ton of currency on the market. Stuff like fertile catalysts, even sometimes some of the crit catalysts and stuff like that are going to command a really good price, and they're going to almost pay back the cost of the Metamorph Zana mod, which is 5 chaos. So Metamorph always drops some amount of catalyst, so you're guaranteed to make some of your money back. But the really cool thing is with Metamorph is it has an incredible amount of chance to drop maps. And when you get into the red map kind of areas, you can make a ton of profit just by getting map drops alone. And early, this is going to be a great way to really juice up your earnings. And if you can slap Metamorph on your maps and you can take them down successfully, you could be getting a ton of extra currency. And it's one that I always recommend to players starting out, trying to grind their first bit of currency up, to do Metamorph, and they always have incredible success with it. Even if you lose out on 1 or 2 Metamorphs, it always pays back in the end as long as you can successfully do it. But make sure you pay attention to the market, and also make sure you pay attention to Scarab prices if you're thinking of doing Metamorph later in the league, because sometimes the Scarabs are so damn cheap, it's just better to go with them instead. So overall, I think that the Zana map modifiers are going to have a massive impact on the fun factor and the economy of 3.15, more so than we've probably ever seen before. The inclusion of Delirium by itself is going to heavily warp the economy, in my opinion, in a good way, and also Ritual is going to spice things up a whole lot, especially when you're using those Atlas passives with them. And I'm glad that they included Metamorph in there for a bit of accessibility and making sure that people can start out farming a bit of currency through that as well. So super duper stoked. If you're worried about the farming meta, it's going to be better than ever. We're essentially playing 2 of some of the best leagues over again, but enhanced, and that is incredibly exciting on top of the league we already have. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you sub for more content. Plenty more on the way. Hope you guys have enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.